Okay, the name of your business partner was?
Faye Zeller.
Zeller,
The
okay.
married name.
So, the closest friends, and when people used to invite you to a bar mitzvah or a wedding, who did they put you at a table with?
Like Rose Kluger, she put me always by the door and by the men's room. So at least I had evidence which man went to the bathroom. And the other day I met her and I told her that. And I said, so this was the pay? Your marriage probably wasn't so terrific. You didn't pay me nothing and you put me sit in the front of the men's room.
Okay. And who was with you at the table?
Who was with me?
Who'd she seat you with?
It was Ida Ender, a girl from Tarnov, and her mother was working with me in concentration camp at the same table when we were fixing army uniforms.
Who else?
So Ida Ender with her husband picked herself up and she went home. Who wants to sit like this? I said, now what can I tell you? But I make a joke out of everything, so that's it.
Were you a member of the Krakow Society? The Krakow Society? How did you meet my mother, for example?
Through Rose Kluger.
So you knew her superficially.
Yeah.
You would go to an event and you would meet other survivors through organizations.
When I was in Krakow organization, in my opinion at least, I was a very hard worker for the organization. I was at least 25 years on the board. I was president of the Ladies Auxiliary. I did the bazaars. I did all card parties. But the card parties, we had to serve food. So I was the caterer and the taking care of the party for years and years. I cannot even tell. And the bazaars, me and my husband were, every year we had to pay for fixing in the car for $350, $400, $200 every year, because we make them too heavy and there's something broke there. And these were my bazaars. The least that we ever made at the bazaar was $10,000.
Wow.
And when I saw that merchandise moved, and I came home at night, Saturday night, and we had to have merchandise a whole day on Sunday, I took my clothes, my daughter's clothes, I washed, I ironed, and I brought fresh merchandise. So that's what I did.
And you met people, but you met a lot.
Yeah, I met a lot of people. Everybody was friendly with me. But but first of all, an awful lot of people who were pretty close with me died out.
Yes, that I understand.
They died out.
So who were you close with that died? Who were you close with that died?
With a lot of people. Like, I cannot mention names right now, but I was not close enough, like when you go to the theater together Nobody
So you-
ever called me. The other day I told Rose Kluger, I said, I spend my time mostly at home. She said, and you don't go to a movie to it. I said, who is interested to take me?
Well, I think that's, my mom feels the same way.
But listen, what I did for that organization, it calls for, I don't know.
But a lot of people can't drive anymore. You know,
You're telling me
a lot of people can't.
my husband was lost without it.
Yeah. So I want to go back to you after you had the business in America, and you were in Brooklyn. But before the Krakow organization, I'm trying to get a sense of. Let me see. Let me go back to my questions because we got off topic. When you made a bas mitzvah you have 2 kids?
I never made a bas mitzvah because
did you
European people
Right, I didn't have
don't believe
one. Right.
in a bas mitzvah.
Did you make a bar mitzvah?
Yes, I did. And
So
I had a horrible experience of this bar mitzvah. The worst. My brother-in-law died.
oh,
He fell. They took him to the hospital and they pronounced him dead.
during the bar mitzvah? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Did you know?
Yes, I knew, and we finished.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah. That was it.
So there was no way you could enjoy this.
How could you?
I'll ask you, can I ask you a question about it anyway?
Yeah.
Or I feel terrible can I ask you a question, or is it going to bring back a bad memory?
No, don't worry about it.
So when you were inviting people, how many of the people did you invite that you knew from Salzburg or Badishal? A lot? A few?
First of all, I had a big family in the Bronx, and I invited them. You know, my mother was one of 10 children, and my uncle had 10 children of his own, the one in the Bronx.
Right.
In fact, one day my other uncle took the 10 children to the Bronx Zoo. And he didn't stop counting them. And finally he came home with 9.
What happened?
One got lost. So he always told me that story.
Oh my God. What did he have to do?
They found him eventually, a boy.
That's funny.
But that was it. But in my family, most of the people had a lot of children. And I invited my cousins. I am still, but they are dying out. Unbelievable.
Right now.
Unbelievable.
Right now.
How I am losing my cousins. I am on very good terms with them. One I have in Boca Raton, and she is in what do you call that,
Assisted living.
assisted living. I visited with her 2 years ago. Last year I didn't because my daughter didn't have the time to take me, and she doesn't drive anymore. She always used to come to my house. Anyway, and I have now my cousin's daughter who is very close with me, she calls me, she sends me, she's 75 years old. She has already big great-grandchildren. Very fine girl. I love her. So she's in close contact with me. And I also had family on my husband's side. I had, no more. But talking about the bar mitzvah, I had 80 couples to the bar mitzvah.
So it was mostly family.
Mostly family. And of course, the friends that I had for that I knew, maybe 15 couples.
Did your husband, the place that your husband was staying, what was the name of that, where you met him? The camp?
In Lambach.
Now, did he stay in touch with anybody from Lambach?
I don't think so. They were not only Jews in Lambach.
Okay, it wasn't a Jewish DP
There
camp.
wasn't a Jewish
okay.
DP, no.
Now, did he have friends? So when he came back with you to Salzburg, did he have friends separate from you?
Probably.
But in Salzburg, that he stayed. Who were his closest friends?
His closest friend he had in Israel. His closest friend here and in New York was Hirschfeld, Milak Hirschfeld.
Where did he know him
He
from?
went to school with him in Krakow.
Oh, really?
And then it was Adam Warfiler in Israel.
How did he know him?
They went to school
So
together. How many times they met here? The three of them.
they knew so they were all born in
And
Krakow.
all his closest friends were in Israel. And my husband wanted to go to Israel. He didn't want to go to the United States. But I wanted to come here, so he went with me. But you know, when we used to come to Israel, we got together, and sometimes we had more than 30 people that knew each other, very close friends.
So were these people all part of the Krakow Association? Or
They live in Israel. Milak Hirschfeld was
New York?
in New York. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
He was in New York, and he was even a certain time president of the Krakow organization.
Now, how did the Krakow, how did it come about? And Krakow was not only people from Krakow. It was all, because my parents were part of it, and they're not from.
I know, but the Krakow organization started first, I would say 95% Krakow people, unless the wife was from a different, but you married into Krakow, like I did. And the same thing with me, I belong to a Tana organization. So he joined me.
But this was all survivors who, how often did they get together?
Oh, we used to get together very often. Maybe in the beginning, I think we used to meet every Saturday night.
So when did it start?
Or maybe twice a month.
Well,
It started, I will tell you, I have a book here. And it started out 1960 something.
And how many people?
Because we had already the 40th anniversary.
And how many
And
people?
it is more now. It was a lot of people. It was 350 members. but in this were couples
So, okay.
and also single people. So let's say that it was about 450 people.
And it was a social group?
Oh yeah,
So what would you do?
we used to meet once a month, Saturday night. We played cards or whatever game somebody wanted, and the organization prepared food. So it was not like a sit-down dinner, but we had some salad, bread, rolls, cake. Most of the time I baked.
And so this was like a social activity for everybody,
Right.
for survivors.
Sure, wonderful. I think this organization was a big asset to the survivors because and except for that, the organization was taking care of so many charities.
Oh, so they would donate money.
They donated money all the time.
But for like you and my mother, it was someplace to go on a Saturday night.
True. Yeah.
So
Not anymore. It's finished. But younger people are taking over slowly but surely.
oh yeah?
I resigned on the list. That was the first election that I didn't run because I told the president that I don't feel like getting there anymore. I have to call, there are people living around. I had to call a cab to go to the meeting. What do I need that for? I'm not active. I have no strength to take care of myself. So how can I take care of? So why
is
should I
second
be on the
generation
board?
doing it now?
What?
Is
Younger generation.
yeah, they're doing it?
There is a lot of younger people now on the board.
Oh, that's good.
And that's the way it should be.
Now, a few more questions. When you were, if you can remember, I want to go back to Salzburg or Bad Ischl, whichever one. How important was Israel? Not now, back then.
All the way.
Was
All the time, ever since the end of the war, Israel was the most important thing to us.
Would you talk about it?
We all talked about it.
That was
Always.
always, and because what did everybody want to go?
I'm telling you, my husband wanted and I didn't.
What did Israel mean to everybody? What was the feeling?
Some people, most of the people who wanted to go were patriots.
Do you think that was because of the war, or they felt that way before the war?
A lot of them because of the war. But a lot of them were Zionists in their heart.
But do you think the war
Like
changed things?
I belong to a Zionist organization ever since I was 12 years old. I belong to a Hanuar. And I always thought that I will go to a Hashara. You know what it is. Before you go to Israel to a kibbutz, you went through a Hashara where they trained you how to work, the earth, how to learn to sow things, how to learn to grow things. So I always thought that when I get older I will go to Hashara And then I wound up in Israel.
But was it different after the war? It was more stronger?
What did you say?
Was it stronger after the war?
After the war, I will tell you the honest truth. What I thought of is how to make my life livable and as good as it can be. That's all I thought of.
And others in the camp?
A lot of people thought only of Israel, and they did go to Israel.
Now, do you remember, just you, do you remember can you separate how you felt about being a Jew before the war versus how you felt about being a Jew after the war?
I felt after the war more of being a Jew, because as a Jew I suffered and I saw what it was and I got through with it. And I thought how to be a better Jew yet. That's all.
Do you think other people felt the same way?
Certain people, yes, and some people not.
What do
I
you,
came across people who converted to Christianity. They didn't want to be a Jew anymore.
so it became more important though to you?
Right.
What was the most profound moment for you about being a Jew in your life?
I cannot think at the moment.
That's all right. If you had to name the five closest people to you of your entire life, friends, not family, who are they?
There is Lutka and Lola Rubinstein, who was not with me in camp, and of course my sister-in-law, and you said not family. I cannot remember the names, but I had a few more people that I adored. I felt very close with them.
Take your time. Where did you know them from?
I knew them, some of them I knew from my town.
From where you lived.
Right.
And did you know them afterwards?
After the war, yes,
They survived the war.
they survived.
Did you know them in DP camps also, even if you don't remember their names?
I don't remember them, but before the war I had a very close friend. They never survived.
But you remember that she was that important to you. And, okay,
They never survived.
okay. Some people have described...
You excuse me a second. I will only light my candles.
Sure.
I can bless them later, but I will light them now. once I told my daughter that this candlestick is for my granddaughter, providing that she will marry a Jewish guy. The same year, she came from camp and she became very religious. She doesn't wear pants. She wears these long skirts and she is religious.
That's great.
So now I don't have to worry about the candlestick.
Okay. There are some people that have described survivors and research that they've done as depressed. Did you ever meet
What?
as depressed?
Yes, many
Have-
times.
Have
Many
you ever
times.
have you ever when you think about survivors, ones you know,
Right.
would you think that's true?
Yes,
You do?
very true.
Your friends?
My friends and myself, I can tell you that I get depressed very often.
Now because you're older, or let me ask you this. The first 20 years you were in America, do you think that's true?
Yes,
You think that's true of other people?
same thing. We all get depressed every now and then.
Depressed always or depressed sometimes?
Sometimes.
And if I were to tell you that in the description other people have, they're depressed always, would you say you were depressed?
Maybe. I am not always depressed.
Did you ever go to a professional and talk about
Oh,
it?
sure.
You did?
Plenty.
Oh, okay. My mother said that when she was in Linz, that among her group of friends, she always talked about the war, and she felt like she was doing group therapy. She doesn't describe herself as feeling depressed, and that she feels like she had group therapy with survivors. And because I asked her this question, she has nightmares
I did too.
at times, not a lot, but so you would say you think most survivors. Could you make a statement like that? Or you think it's everybody's an individual?
I will tell you something. Everybody is an individual. But I don't believe that only the survivors get depressed.
You think everybody?
I think everybody gets depressed
Okay.
one time or another.
Okay. Now,
And there are also people who know.
now, you were saying that you think everybody's a little depressed.
Yes.
Okay, that's a fair statement. Now, if I were to ask you to remember to a couple of, we didn't quite finish on your invitations and the fish and your wedding.
Yes.
So how was the wedding?
The wedding, in my opinion, it was a beautiful wedding, but I also had complaints. One woman came over to me and she said, "Sure, you gave this table the big pieces and you gave this table the little pieces." I said, "First of all, I didn't give, somebody was giving out the fish." So, but people had still in there, the concentration camp mind works like this, that you want a big piece of everything, not a small piece is not enough.
That's so funny. You probably gave Rose Kluger a small piece, which is why she put you at the table near the
Maybe.
men's room.
That's possible.
Your husband, I asked you the question about whether it was more or less important if your husband was here, and I would ask him that question, and of course I'm asking you to tell me his answer, what do you think his answer would be about being Jewish? Was it more or less important after the war?
He was always feeling very Jewish and working towards Jewish causes. And
But it was more important, you think it was more important after the war?
he was in a Zionist organization before the war. He was brought up this way.
Okay, so probably the same.
And he was probably, I'm telling you, he wanted to go to Israel after the war. I was the one who was, I knew that my family will be here.
Now, just to, if you could remember a great or a funny or a story from Bad Ischl or probably from Salzburg, something different that you can share with me. It can be anything.
At the moment,
I know a couple of more things. In Salzburg, did the people in Salzburg, the Jewish survivors, did they set up their own structure for work? You said Michael was a big shot.
no, Michael was only for the camp.
For the camp. How did the camp run itself? How did the camp work? In other words, how did you live?
They probably, how did
you
we
manage?
had our rations.
You had rations.
We had rations, and we had, they had a kitchen, they cooked, let's say, soup. So we had such a tall, skinny, and one of us went to get the soup, and we ate it in our room. We shared the soup.
But did they try to figure out how to make a little business with each other? Did they try to figure out how
Not that I know of. A lot of people started black market, so they were selling even food, certain food.
to try to make a little money?
Yeah, to me.
But were they trying to do it with each other, or was everybody doing it separately?
Yeah, they did it with each other also. But everybody has his own business, his own.
Everybody. So people were beginning to try to make a living.
Right,
So they were beginning their lives again.
sure.
Was people helping each other to start to go to America, or were they just contacting, was everybody trying to do it on their own?
Most of everybody went to America through the joint.
Nias.
through the Hias, yeah.
So did you feel like you had a group behind you, or were people helping each other?
Well, I felt like an individual.
Okay.
I went through the Hayats and I was brought to my uncle, poor as a church mouse, and but very, very big heart. He would give me a piece of the sky if he could.
Now this.
And so was
sorry.
my aunt, the same thing. They were wonderful people, but very poor. He used to be a tailor, worked in the garment center. He used to carry his own, had the machine, and looking for a job. That was many, many years ago, but this is his job, was his job. And then he worked in a factory till he was 65 years old. That's all.
the Krakow Society began in '65. You had the dress shop with Faye. You had your kids before that.
Right. And my kids went to private school.
So the first part of being in America, you were busy working.
Yes.
But the second part of being in America, you were socializing with survivors.
Right.
So that had to be an important part of your, was that an important part of your life?
It was. I gave everything I could to the organization.
So you had a big social life with survivors. Okay. So so you gave me, I want to thank you because you gave me a lot of